Hello, this is Dave from Codec Research Centre here to talk to you about flipped classroom environments. Let's begin by looking at the kind of learning process. So there's basically three stages. The first one I call knowledge acquisition. Knowledge acquisition is where you do the kind of bulk of the learning. This is traditionally is the classroom environment or the lecture theatre. Apologies for the handwriting, not a strong point. So that's stage one. Stage two is knowledge evaluation. Now, knowledge evaluation is where you begin to question the content that you've learnt at stage one. It's where you start to have discussions, either in a group or indeed with yourself, about the information that has just been shared. Stage three is knowledge implementation. It's fairly self-explanatory, I suppose, but knowledge implementation is where you take the information that you've been taught and that you've grappled with, and then you now put it into practice. Now, at stage one, this traditionally happens in the sort of classroom environment in our university. That is a terrible drawing, apologies for that. So that's where that traditionally happens. In stage two, this traditionally happens down the pub. Or indeed down in a coffee shop or at home, and that sort of thing. That looks more like an ice cream cone. Ah well. So this is the sort of traditional format. You do your learning here, and then you kind of go away and you do this on your own, or indeed you don't do this. The evaluation and the implementation. The student may not ever get to stage 2 or 3. Now, what happens with a flipped classroom is that we spin all of this around and we take out the learning from that environment, and instead we move it online, or we make it digital. Now, how this works is that the lecturer will create content and make videos or audio files or something that the student will then make use of. They'll then structure their learning at their own pace in their own time. What happens then, this all happens pre-entering the classroom. What happens then is that we join these two together, we bring these into the classroom. Let's see if we can do this better. No, not really. And what happens here is that the students are now guided through the evaluation and implementation process by the lecturer. So what we have in a flipped classroom environment is a lecturer who is involved in all three stages of the learning process, not just at stage 1 in the traditional environment. So that's one of the big advantages to the flipped classroom environment. Now, there are some things that you'll have to do as a lecturer for this. You'll have to create. So you'll have to create more new content for knowledge acquisition. So videos. Probably if you're doing a video, make sure that it's no longer than 6 minutes. You could do audio files. They can be a bit longer, 10 to 15 minutes, and sort of information sheets as well. But you'll have to create new content. The other thing you have to grapple with is the fact that there will be less face-to-face time. I would suggest that rather than doing a traditional 2-hour block, do a 1-hour block for this 2 and 3 stage, but make sure the room is booked out for 2 hours. That way, when it carries on, which it probably will, there's that space that can happen, and you're still in control of that. In control is probably not the right term there. The third thing is that you'll have to be flexible. You'll have to be flexible in a number of ways. You'll have to be flexible in the shape of the content. As I said, you're going to have to create new content, and that may need to change its style slightly. You're also going to have to change the way you run the classroom environment. No longer can you do this in rows. This would not work with discussion. This would not work in this environment, or for this type of learning rather. Now, let's cross that out. Now we want circles. Circles are good for discussion. Now these could be little groups of discussion, little discussion groups rather, or one big group. But what you need to make sure as the lecturer in this situation is you're not stood at the front, stood up, talking to people sat down. Get involved. Be in all the different groups, be right there, sitting around talking. I mean, all of this is fairly simple stuff, and it makes sense. But that's how stages 2 and 3 can be really effective with that new shape of learning environment. So there you go, there's a really quick overview of what a flipped classroom might look like. Hopefully that all made sense. A lot of awful drawings and bad handwriting, so hopefully that all helped. Thanks.